The contour map of the leachate levels within the Extension 1 landfill site in 2000 indicated that the primary flow direction is towards Dovers Brook. This groundwater flow direction would have been controlled by the underlying glacial clay. Here you can see the backfield dipping towards us. So this is on the west side of Sefton Meadows South. Here once again the field is sloping towards us. The waste from the fill is below us. On the video here, the waste is in the foreground. Look at the background where the trees are. Look at the way that the fields slope towards you. Don't forget the topsoil is only about a foot thick here. When Persimmon Homes excavated all the waste from Sefton Meadows north, you could clearly see the slope of the clay base heading towards the River Alt. Both that as a general view and this where they put the gas barrier in, closer to the river itself. Walking south along the River Alt from Bridges Lane, take a look here where it's obvious where the leachate is seeping from underneath the flood defences. It's quite linear and there's no dieback on the flood defences either. This again gives you an idea of how much that basal clay controls the leachate flow in and around the landfills. Midway along our walk you can see that the actual height of the bunds as well is twice what it was in east, west and north. The waste was tipped much thicker here. Back to the unique opportunity here. This shows Dovers Brook in very low flow conditions. The grass has been cut and you can actually see where the boreholes are. It's quite linear up to the bridge here. Our first leachate outbreak is seen opposite the gauging station and comes about 3 feet above the water level in Dovers Brook. Only a small one that. Get out towards where the antenna transmitter is and you begin to see the actual landslips that there are there. I've indicated these on some maps. What I'm trying to do is to give you some idea of the extent of them and the amount of leachate that there is flowing out of these. If you take a look closely, you can actually pick up the flow on some of these seepages. The ochreous stain quite often that goes onto the mudflats here is actually below the level of the water that's in Dovers Brook. Again, take a close look, you can see the flow here. To note that the leachate flows mostly seem to be from the base of the landslip, but that in fact some of them do come about 1 or 2 metres above the water level in the Dovers Brook, which is kind of irregular, but may give you some indication of the height of the leachate in the landfill. The approximate width of this landslip is somewhere between 10 and 15 metres, so it is quite a large one. It's not possible to see how much it's actually dropped by, and I suspect may have been tipped back up again when the brook itself has been dredged. As you walk further north to the first bend in Dovers Brook, you're able to pick up things like this, which does look as though leachate is coming out of that pipe. It's pretty low down to be field drainage, I've got to admit, but what the hell. Elsewhere, leachate once again coming out. You sometimes get this oily film with it as well, and again the flows on these are quite high. We had actually monitored the amount of ammonia in this several years ago with the Forestry Commission, and as you'll see from the map you've included in your report, there are values which are pretty high indeed. Here we have a view of an ochre stain on the opposite side of the river that I've got to admit I've not seen before. Okay, back to our own side here, and this is the first bend more or less. You'll see some coping stones in the course of the river here that puts you somewhere in, and again it looks almost landslipish, but nowhere near as big as the one near the transmitter. Flow again is low but steady, and you can imagine that this quite often would be at about water level in Dovers Brook, even underneath it. So heading back to the transmitter again, I wanted to get some more views of the landslip around there, where there is a massive amount of leachate coming out. Got to excuse me here, I had to do some jiggery pokery with the editing to get it the right way round for you, but it does give you some idea of the actual width of this landslip and the amount of leachate fluid that's coming out of it. Okay, so for me the principal things that this shows is leachate flow is into Dovers Brook, and it quite often can be anything up to a metre above the actual water level itself, above the clay. Landslips, which suggests that the flow direction is towards Dovers Brook. And of course that rather unusual insight we had where Sefton Meadows North was excavated and it showed the slope of the basal clay. You're watching an Atlantic video view of Sefton Meadows.